The spread of nuclear weapons is the greatest threat facing our country and, I would argue, facing humanity. Quote from Joe Biden. I affirm that states ought to eliminate their nuclear arsenals based on my values regarding the safety and future of Earth's natural resources and global population. I plan to uphold my values of safety and future by arguing against the development of nuclear arsenals, which is defined as a subset of tactical nuclear missiles. I would as well be arguing against the increased proliferation of nuclear weaponry, which is defined as the spread of nuclear weapons, technology, and information to nations not assigned as a nuclear state. I will touch on the subjects of cost, destruction, and expansion to back up my values of future and safety. In my first argument, I will discuss how much money actually goes into nuclear production. From the years 1940 to 1999, based on an article posted on Brookings.edu, the US has spent an estimated $5.8 trillion on nuclear production. 86% of that money spent has been used for launch systems. Launch systems include strategic bombers, ballistic missiles, and even landmines. Compared to all other federal government expenses, spending on the nuclear production is ranked third out of all federal expenses. On average, the US spends $98 billion per year during this time frame on nuclear development. The US has devoted an extensive amount of effort, resources, and money towards the development and production of nuclear arsenals. The nuclear budget outweighs costs from education, employment, national resources, and more, all combined. If we had instead used our budget to support these other federal expenses, a society that could be increased in safety and a future that could be held with a better version of our society could have been achieved. But we've spent so much money in nuclear arsenals, the safety of our nation is in jeopardy due to not only the danger of the bombs, but the future is in jeopardy because we won't be able to improve on our essential aspects of our everyday life, such as employment and education. Nuclear development costs are large, but the risks of increased nuclear proliferation can prove to be even more detrimental to our nation and the world as a whole. My second argument contains my claim that if states continue to expand nuclear production, instances of both horizontal and vertical proliferation will occur. This will increase the risk for a full-out nuclear war. Vertical proliferation basically includes an increase in arsenals for states that already possess them. So if a state already possesses a nuclear arsenal, vertical proliferation basically means that that state is continuing to build on that arsenal, such as the United States and Russia still currently do. Horizontal proliferation basically surrounds the notion that a state that doesn't have any form of nuclear production is starting a form of nuclear development. So it's a state that doesn't have any form of nuclear production. They are giving the materials, the resources, and technology and knowledge from other states and then start developing it on their own. That's horizontal proliferation. These are definitions per NCBA, an article by Victor Siddall and Barry Levy. In order to depict how effective proliferation actually is in regards to nuclear development, we must take into account the Cuban Missile Crisis. In the Cuban Missile Crisis, just to sum it up really quickly, it basically included an American plane flying over Cuba and photographing nuclear development from the Russians. This was such a big deal because Cuba was in range of the United States. Basically what happened is there was a 2-week debate between the United States and Russia in order for them to find a middle ground as to not eliminate both countries completely. What they agreed upon was that Russia demanded that the United States take away their weaponry that they had in Turkey, which is in range of Russia. So first they demanded that, then they demanded that they will only take away the nuclear development stations in Cuba if the US promised not to invade. The US agreed, and the situation was resolved for the time being. Essentially what has happened was the US had pushed the limits of how many nuclear weapons they could produce and extended the areas in which they could produce it at. This form of vertical proliferation by the US basically forced Russia to develop missiles and nuclear developments in Cuba. If the US had weapons of mass destruction in range of Russia, then Russia felt the need to have weapons of mass destruction in the range of the United States. You could see how proliferation could then be an issue regarding not even just Russia and the United States, but many other countries who are probably going to want to do the same thing. This event, like I said, was resolved, but if it hadn't, the safety and future of the entire world would definitely be in jeopardy, just based off of the repercussions that we will go over in just a bit. Proliferation between states has caused a drastic expansion of nuclear knowledge and production, and it is this expansion that can lead to a worldwide nuclear fallout. As the nuclear technology advances, an increase in risk of environmental catastrophes, worldwide destruction, and severe human casualties are all inevitable. If we consider the possibility of a small-scale nuclear war, the economic effects would be absolutely astronomical. According to UCLA professor Richard Turco, if a war in which just 0.03% of the world's nuclear arsenal was used, climatic anomalies from the black soot that would have been launched into the air by these nuclear bombs would include a plummet in global temperatures, immediately sending us into an ice age, a halt of all crop production that would span over decades, not even just past the ice age, as well as a huge reduction of the ozone layer, about 40% in the equators and up to 70% at the poles. The advancements are so high, in fact, that according to an article written on beyondthebomb.org by Colleen Moore, the current B-83 warhead, the US's main warhead that we have exploited, that Donald Trump has talked about, it contains 60 times the power of Fat Man. Fat Man is the bomb that was used in World War II against Japan. If we were to uphold the values of safety and future for not only ourselves, but for our entire world, nuclear development ought to be banned. States ought to eliminate nuclear arsenals. I affirm this proposition due to the risk that nuclear warheads have on the safety of the population and the future of the environmental world as a whole. If states continued in the desire to increase nuclear production, issues including the misuse of federal budget, a spread of vertical and horizontal proliferation, and worldwide destruction are all possible. As Emmett Ray once said, Earth is a playground of our children and their children. We cannot allow it to be a playground for the nuclear arms of the evil forces. Ban nuclear arsenals. Thank you.
Good timing, it's 55.